My ex told people I hit her when I left, so I released videos, cleared my name, and she lost everything she built on that lie. I'm a 28-year-old guy, and until recently, I thought I had my life together. I had a steady job, a small circle of friends I trusted, and I'd been in a serious relationship with Rachel for almost 3 years. On the surface, everything looked normal, but there were small things, little moments that didn't make sense. Her sarcasm about my friends, the way she questioned every decision I made, the subtle digs at my family. I brushed them off at first, telling myself every couple had quirks, that love meant looking past these things. We lived together in a small apartment downtown, the kind with creaky floors and peeling paint, and for a while it felt like home. But even then, there was this tension that never fully went away, like walking on cracked glass, never knowing when I'd step wrong. I remember coming home one night to find my favorite hoodie slashed across the chest, and she just laughed it off. "You're so dramatic," she said, twirling a strand of her hair like I was the crazy one. I didn't say much because I wanted peace, not war. It wasn't just that. Friends would text me, wondering why she always seemed to be the victim in our arguments, why every story she told painted me as the villain. And somehow, in her version, I always came across as controlling, angry, unstable. It didn't make sense. I wasn't perfect, but I'd never hit her, never screamed in her face, never betrayed her trust. But the unease kept building. I started noticing the way she whispered to friends when I wasn't around, how she'd delete texts or call me paranoid when I asked who she'd been talking to. I thought maybe I was overthinking it, that I was imagining things, but deep down, a gnawing fear started to grow in my chest. One day I realized that ending things might not just be painful emotionally, it could get messy in ways I wasn't prepared for, and that's when it happened. She dropped the first hint that leaving her wasn't going to be simple. A casual comment, meant to be funny, or maybe threatening, but it landed like a punch. "If you ever leave, people will think you're the monster." I laughed it off, but a shiver ran down my spine. Something told me this breakup wasn't going to end quietly. It started the night I finally told her I couldn't do it anymore. I had rehearsed the words in my head for weeks, but saying them aloud was harder than I imagined. "Rachel, I think we need to break up," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She froze for a moment, then laughed, a short, sharp laugh that didn't reach her eyes. "So that's it? After everything we've done?" Her voice cracked, but it wasn't sorrow. It was something sharper, like a blade hiding in silk. I tried to explain myself, to tell her it wasn't about anyone else, that I just needed space, that I wasn't happy anymore. But every word I said seemed to feed her rage instead of easing it. "You're just like all the others," she snapped. "You leave, and suddenly I'm the enemy. Typical. You always find a way to ruin everything." Her hands shook, but I didn't flinch. I'd rehearsed this too many times. She started pacing the apartment, slamming drawers, knocking over a stack of books. I remember the way the lamp cast her shadow across the peeling wallpaper. It made her look bigger, threatening, almost unrecognizable. I kept my distance, my hands in my pockets, trying not to escalate things. "Rachel, calm down, please," I said, my voice gentle but firm. I need to do this for me." Her eyes narrowed, and she tilted her head like she was studying me, weighing her options. "Do you really think you can just walk out and everyone will believe your side?" She hissed. That line hit me like a bucket of ice water. I hadn't thought about it, hadn't considered that she might try to turn everyone against me. By the end of the night, the breakup was done, but something shifted. There was a coldness in her that hadn't been there before, a sense of purpose in her anger. I didn't know it yet, but the real battle was just beginning. Something told me that leaving her wasn't going to be the relief I'd imagined. It was going to be the first step into a storm I wasn't prepared for. A few days after I moved out, the whispers started. At first, it was small things, friends texting, casual comments from coworkers, but soon it snowballed. "Hey, did you hear about Rachel? She said you hit her." I froze, my stomach twisting into knots. My first instinct was disbelief, then panic. "What? No, that's not true." I knew I had never laid a hand on her, never even raised my voice to a point that could be called abuse. But the seed had been planted. People I trusted started avoiding me, subtly shifting conversations when I walked into a room. One friend, someone I'd known for over a decade, whispered, "I don't know what happened between you two, but I hope you're okay." The doubt in their eyes stabbed me. Every interaction felt like a minefield. I didn't know who to trust. I tried calling Rachel, thinking maybe I could clear it up privately. "You're twisting everything," I said, my voice trembling. "I never hit you." Her laugh came through the line, sharp, almost cruel. "Everyone already knows the truth," she said. "You don't get to tell your story anymore." That's when it hit me. She was running her narrative, painting me as the villain, and no one would question her. Everywhere I went, I could feel it, the judgment. The sideways glances, the hushed conversations. Even strangers seemed to sense something wrong about me. I started losing sleep, pacing my apartment, imagining what she might say next. The anxiety was suffocating, and a creeping dread settled in my chest. If I didn't act fast, this lie could destroy my reputation, my friendships, maybe even my career. By the end of the week, it wasn't just whispers anymore. She had escalated, posting vague stories online, hinting at abuse without naming me, but everyone connected the dots. I realized with a sinking feeling that this wasn't going to fade on its own. The storm had arrived, and I was standing in the middle of it, completely unarmed. I knew I couldn't just sit back and hope this would blow over. Every day I felt like I was suffocating under the weight of her lies. My phone buzzed constantly, messages from friends I hadn't heard from in weeks, some supportive, some hesitant, most laced with doubt. I couldn't blame them entirely. She was skilled at playing the victim, spinning stories that made me look like a monster. But I also knew that letting her narrative dominate would destroy everything I'd built. So I started documenting everything. Screenshots of texts where she contradicted herself, old videos of us together that showed her calm and laughing, even receipts proving where I'd been during moments she claimed I'd attacked her. It was meticulous, exhausting work. Nights blurred together. I'd scroll through my phone at 3 a.m., comparing messages, analyzing timestamps, trying to build a case strong enough to prove my innocence. The apartment felt colder, emptier, and the silence was almost deafening. Every time I thought I had enough evidence, a pang of doubt crept in. What if it's not enough? What if no one believes me? I'd replay arguments in my head, trying to imagine her telling the story from her perspective, and it made my stomach churn. She had a way of twisting reality, of making even neutral moments sound malicious. I knew I needed more than just proof. I needed a strategy. I reached out to a few friends who had been present during key moments. "I need your honesty," I told them. "If she says I hurt her, will you tell the truth?" Some hesitated. Others nodded silently. Their hesitation only reminded me how fragile the situation was. The fear of losing my social circle, my reputation, and the small sense of normalcy I had left gnawed at me. By the end of the week, I had a growing folder of evidence, but it felt like a drop in the ocean compared to the tidal wave she'd started. Every notification, every story she posted, every vague accusation was like another nail in a coffin I didn't want to end up in. I knew I had to act, but I wasn't sure where the first strike should land, and I feared the storm wasn't over yet. Then the backlash hit like a freight train. It started small, friends sharing her posts, vague comments like, "I hope you're okay, but I heard some things." But soon it became undeniable. People I trusted, co-workers I respected, even distant relatives were whispering, questioning, avoiding me. Every text, every glance, every conversation felt like an accusation. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, and every notification made my heart hammer in my chest. The apartment that once felt like my sanctuary now felt like a cage. I tried to defend myself, messaging friends individually, sending calm, factual explanations. "I've never hit her. You know me. Please believe me," I typed over and over. Some responded with doubt, some offered hesitant support, but the majority didn't say anything. Silence in this case was as loud as accusation. I felt like I was shouting into a void, powerless as my life was slowly being rewritten by her lies. The social media side of it was worse. Anonymous comments, old acquaintances chiming in, a friend of a friend posting, "He's probably guilty." She wouldn't lie. Each one felt like another punch. each one like a layer of poison coating my world. I started doubting myself. Was I missing something? Could I have done something that justified her story? My mind was spinning, reality blurring with paranoia, and I realized fear was now my constant companion. Even my therapist noted my anxiety had spiked. "You're carrying this alone and it's consuming you," she said during one session. I nodded silently, too drained to argue. Nights became endless loops of worry, imagining her telling stories to my colleagues, envisioning my friends questioning my character, replaying our arguments and wondering if anyone would ever believe me. By the end of the week, I had reached my breaking point emotionally. I knew that sitting quietly wasn't an option, but I also knew that confronting her carelessly could make things worse. Something had to change, and fast. The next move I made would determine whether I would survive this, or if the lie would destroy everything I had worked for. I thought I had exhausted every possible avenue, that my reputation was slowly unraveling, and there was nothing I could do. That's when I stumbled across something I never expected: hidden recordings on my phone. Old videos, clips I thought were private moments, now revealed so much more than I ever realized. There she was, contradicting herself in multiple conversations, laughing, joking, and admitting things that completely dismantled her accusations. My heart pounded, part relief, part fury. I had tangible proof that I was telling the truth, and that she was constructing a story to ruin me. Watching the footage, I felt a mix of disbelief and vindication. Every time she had portrayed herself as vulnerable or afraid, the videos showed her smirking, twisting the narrative behind my back. My hands shook as I paused and replayed one segment where she literally told a friend, "He's too naive to realize how I play this." That line alone was like a dagger. Her awareness of her own deceit was chilling. But it was also the lifeline I desperately needed. The fear, though, didn't vanish immediately. I knew that if I released these videos carelessly, it could backfire. She was manipulative enough to spin them, to accuse me of invading her privacy, to make herself a victim once again. I paced my apartment, heart racing, thinking through every angle. Every detail mattered: the order, the context, the timing. I needed a strategy that would leave no room for doubt. For the first time in weeks, I felt a spark of hope. Maybe I could finally turn the tide, finally reclaim my life and my name. But there was a catch. I had to act decisively, and any hesitation could give her the upper hand again. One wrong move, and I'd be back at square one, facing an even bigger storm than before. I knew it was now or never. The moment of truth was looming, and with every second, the pressure to act was suffocating. Something told me that the next steps I took would either crush her lies completely or plunge me deeper into chaos. I spent the next few days meticulously planning. Every clip, every screenshot, every timestamp, I went through them with a fine-tooth comb. I knew I couldn't just throw the evidence out there and hope for the best. One wrong move, one poorly framed video, and she could accuse me of harassment or invasive privacy, twisting everything again. My anxiety was through the roof, but determination had replaced despair. I was done letting her control the narrative. I created a folder on my computer labeled Proof and began organizing everything chronologically, the way I had hoped a stranger or friend would see it: unbiased, undeniable, clean. I rehearsed the explanations I might give if someone questioned the context, making sure I stayed calm, factual, and unprovocative. The stakes felt enormous. My career, my friendships, my reputation, it all hung in the balance. Late at night, I double-checked the files. The apartment was silent except for the hum of the fridge and the occasional car outside. The isolation made my nerves worse, every creak in the floor echoing like a warning. I paused to breathe, thinking about how she had made me feel powerless for weeks, and realized that now the power had shifted. The choice was mine to expose the truth. I even practiced sending a test message to a close friend with one of the clips attached, gauging reactions, measuring disbelief. The nods, texts, and messages of shock and validation were a small taste of the reckoning I knew was coming. My pulse raced as I realized the enormity of what I was about to do. Once released, there would be no going back. Finally, I exhaled slowly, sitting back in my chair. Every scenario ran through my head. What if it blew up on social media? What if she tried to sue me? But the thought that she had manipulated so many people for so long pushed me forward. I knew this was my moment, the point where I could finally take control, show the world the truth, and strip away the empire of lies she had built. The moment I hit send on the first batch of videos, my phone blew up. Messages poured in from friends, family, even colleagues I hadn't spoken to in months. "I can't believe this." "She lied?" One text read. Another said, "Thank you for showing the truth. I was starting to doubt myself." The relief was instantaneous, but it was tangled with nervous anticipation. Would everyone really believe me? Or would she manage to twist even this into some narrative where I looked bad? Almost immediately, the reactions started rolling in on social media. Comments ranged from shock to support, and for the first time in weeks, I felt validation. People I thought I had lost were now messaging privately, apologizing for doubting me, expressing regret and even anger toward her. I could almost feel the weight lifting off my shoulders, but I didn't celebrate. I knew this was just the first wave. Her next move would likely be more desperate, more vindictive, and then it came. A friend forwarded me a screenshot of her trying to post a long explanation online, claiming invasion of privacy and painting herself as the victim of harassment. But the twist was clear. The videos she tried to address contradicted everything she said. Every lie she had told unraveled in plain sight. Her attempts at control were failing. For the first time, the power was fully in my hands. Watching her scramble to spin her story was surreal. There was panic in her words, almost comical if it weren't so serious. I could feel a strange mixture of satisfaction and disbelief. This was finally justice, a moment where the truth prevailed and her lies were exposed to everyone who mattered. Yet beneath the satisfaction, a small knot of tension remained. I knew she might still try one last desperate move, and the thought kept me alert, pacing my apartment late into the night. By the end of the day, the tide had clearly shifted. People were seeing me as the victim, and she was losing her grip. But even as I felt vindicated, a sense of cautious anticipation settled in. The storm wasn't fully over yet. There was still one final act she might take, and I had to be ready. She didn't go down quietly. Within hours of the video release, she launched a series of desperate counterattacks, vague social media posts, private messages to mutual friends, even a few thinly veiled accusations directed at my work. Every attempt was clumsy, frantic, but I could see the underlying intent, to muddy the waters, to make herself look like a victim again. It was almost impressive, in a terrifying way, how far she was willing to go. One afternoon, I got a message from a coworker I trusted implicitly. She said something. "I'm not sure what to believe anymore," they wrote. My chest sank. Even with proof in my hands, her manipulation still had power. I felt a cold, sinking realization. This wasn't just about clearing my name anymore. It was about surviving her relentless campaign to destroy my credibility. The thought made my stomach twist. I started documenting these new attacks as well, creating a timeline of her desperate maneuvers. Each message, each post, each conversation was another nail in the coffin of her lies. Watching her unravel, I felt a strange mixture of vindication and anxiety. She was panicking, and yet she still had enough reach to cause minor chaos if I slipped. Then came a particularly nasty post on a forum where she had a small following. She tried to paint me as obsessive, vindictive, and controlling, ignoring every piece of evidence I had shared. I read it, my heart hammering, but this time I didn't feel fear, I felt clarity. Her panic was a reflection of her own guilt. The more she tried to fight, the clearer it became that she was cornered, and the truth was on my side. By the end of the week, the desperation in her attacks only highlighted her unraveling. Every lie she tried to push, every smear she attempted, ended up exposing more of her manipulation. And as exhausting as it was to stay vigilant, I knew the finish line was coming. The question now wasn't whether she would retaliate. It was how badly she would fall when the truth finally landed. Just when I thought the worst was behind me, she landed a blow I hadn't anticipated. One of her posts, crafted with subtlety and half-truths, reached a wider audience than any of her previous attempts. Mutual friends, people I had trusted completely, began questioning me again. I don't know what to believe. Maybe she has a point. One text read, and my chest tightened like someone had wrapped steel around it. The weight of isolation, betrayal, and exhaustion crashed down all at once. I spent that night pacing my apartment, staring at the ceiling, feeling utterly powerless. The recordings I had painstakingly gathered suddenly felt fragile, almost meaningless against the tide of public opinion. My phone vibrated constantly, messages, notifications, comments, all reinforcing the chaos. Even my own thoughts betrayed me. Maybe I should have left things alone. Maybe it's my fault. The mental spiral was suffocating. The apartment felt smaller, darker. Every creak of the floor, every car passing outside seemed amplified, like some ominous reminder of my precarious situation. I sat on the edge of the bed, hands trembling, and for the first time since this all began, I felt completely broken. The months of manipulation, stress, and relentless attacks had taken a toll I hadn't fully acknowledged. I wanted to scream, to lash out, to make the world understand. But even the thought of engaging felt impossible. Exhaustion blurred with fear, and I realized just how close I had come to being defeated emotionally. For the first time, I truly understood the power of her lies, the way one person's narrative could threaten an entire life. And yet, amid the despair, a flicker of determination began to surface. I couldn't let her define me. I couldn't let this lie win. Something inside me hardened, a quiet but fierce resolve forming. I knew that the next move I made had to be the one that finally ended this for good, or I risked losing everything I had left. The next morning, I made my move. I released the final set of videos, meticulously edited to show the truth chronologically, leaving no room for interpretation. Each clip highlighted her contradictions, her manipulations, and the lies she had spun for weeks. I paired them with concise explanations, timestamps, and witness confirmations, everything designed to make the truth undeniable. The moment I clicked post, I felt a mix of fear and exhilaration. Within hours, the reactions were overwhelming. Friends, family, co-workers, and even casual acquaintances who had doubted me flooded me with messages. "I believe you now." I had no idea. "Thank you for showing the truth." The words poured in like a tidal wave, washing away weeks of fear and anxiety. The narrative had finally flipped. She tried to respond, to defend herself, but every message she sent only reinforced the reality. She had lost credibility, and everyone could see it. Then came the surreal part. Her own social circle started questioning her. Mutual friends confronted her, asking why she had twisted everything, why she had spread lies. For the first time, she faced the consequences of her actions publicly. I watched the unraveling from a distance, a strange mix of vindication and disbelief coursing through me. The storm I had feared for so long had finally been weathered, and I was standing on solid ground. I felt a strange sense of calm as the dust settled. The panic, the isolation, the crushing weight of doubt, it all began to lift. My name was cleared, my reputation intact, and the lies that had haunted me for weeks were exposed for what they truly were. I realized then that this wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming my life, my dignity, and my peace of mind. By the end of the day, she had lost everything she had built on those lies: trust, relationships, and credibility. And though I had been terrified, exhausted, and broken at points along the way, I finally felt something I hadn't in weeks: empowered. The storm had passed and I had survived, but even as relief washed over me, I couldn't shake the awareness that the scars of manipulation and betrayal would stay with me for a long time, a reminder of the battle I had fought and won. Weeks later, after the chaos had finally quieted, I sat alone in my apartment, reflecting on everything that had happened. The fear, the sleepless nights, the paranoia, it all felt like a distant storm, yet its impact lingered. I thought about how close I had come to losing everything: friendships, my career, my sense of self. And I realized that surviving her lies wasn't just about proving her wrong, it was about reclaiming my own strength. I started journaling, writing down the lessons I had learned. Boundaries are sacred. Evidence and clarity matter more than pride. And most importantly, no one else's perception of you should dictate your peace of mind. I had learned the hard way how easily someone could manipulate people's beliefs. But I had also learned that truth, when wielded carefully and courageously, can prevail. Friends and family slowly returned fully into my life. Their trust rebuilt, their apologies sincere. Conversations that had been tense became warm again, and I felt a new layer of appreciation for those who had stood by me. But beyond that, I felt a shift within myself. I wasn't just relieved, I was empowered. I had faced the worst, and I had not only survived, I had triumphed. Even as I rebuilt and healed, I kept a quiet caution about manipulation and deceit. I knew I had the tools now: vigilance, evidence, and self-respect. I also realized the importance of trusting my instincts, of standing firm when someone tries to rewrite reality. That strength, once dormant, had been awakened. Looking back, the ordeal had been brutal, but it had changed me for the better. I had reclaimed my narrative, my dignity, and my life. And while scars remained, they were marks of resilience, not defeat. I had been lied about, attacked, and pushed to my limits, but I had emerged victorious. And for the first time in a long time, I felt fully, unapologetically in control of my own story.